She thought her biggest fear was losing her husband. She was wrong. The real danger was already inside the house. A man torn between two women, a wife fighting for her marriage. But what if the real threat isn't who you think? In this battle of love and deception, no one will escape unscathed. Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Today we'll be discussing a captivating new Nigerian movie that goes beyond mere entertainment. It's filled with important life lessons you won't want to miss. So let's dive right in. The movie begins with a young woman named Amada who organizes a surprise celebration for her wedding anniversary. However, when her husband Zuriel arrives, he seems completely uninterested in the celebration or anything she says. The next day, Amada's friend, Scarlett, visits her. Amada confides in Scarlett about how dull and disappointing her anniversary was. She considers having a conversation with her husband about it, but also tells Scarlett about a strange dream in which she saw her late best friend, Clary. She doesn't understand why Clary appeared in her dream, but Scarlett reassures her, and they enjoy their time together. A few days later, Clary, who has just returned from the United States, is warmly welcomed by her cousin, Rebecca. After exchanging pleasantries, they go inside, and Rebecca serves her a meal. While eating, Clary eagerly asks about everyone, especially Zuriel, whom she calls the love of her life. She insists on seeing him that very day. Meanwhile, at the office, Zuriel is informed by his secretary that one of his top investors has just canceled an important meeting, and other investors are demanding their money back. Frustrated, he tells her to proceed with her suggested course of action. Left alone, he appears deep in thought. At the same time, Clary is on her way to see Zuriel, excited about reuniting with him and anticipating his reaction. However, Rebecca acts strangely, making Clary suspicious. What could be going on? Back at the office, Zuriel's secretary informs him that he has visitors, but he refuses to see anyone. Despite this, Clary and Rebecca enter, and the moment Clary speaks, Zuriel is hit with a flashback of their past love. He is in shock, unable to believe Clary is standing before him, as she was long dead to him. As Clary moves closer, he instinctively rejects her, and then faints. When he regains consciousness, Zuriel confronts Rebecca, asking why she never told him the truth. He also expresses his relief and happiness at seeing Clary again. Clary explains that her phone was stolen, which led to years of miscommunication. As they catch up, she suddenly realizes that Zuriel is now married to Amada, her best friend. That night, when Amada welcomes her husband home, he rejects her advances and heads to the bedroom, leaving her hurt. Later that night, Rebecca checks on Clary, who is deeply heartbroken upon discovering that Amada married the man she loved the most. She is also devastated that Zuriel didn't wait for her as he had promised, though she understands that they all believed she was dead. Overwhelmed with emotions, Clary chooses to sleep rather than continue talking. As Amada kisses her husband goodnight and falls asleep, Zuriel opens his eyes, remaining silent and lost in thought. The next morning, Clary is determined to confront Amada, but Rebecca strongly discourages her, fearing what she might do. When Clary refuses to change her mind, Rebecca insists on accompanying her, as she doesn't trust her intentions. That same morning, Amada notices that her husband seems like he wants to say something to her before leaving for work, but he ultimately remains silent. A while later, Amada answers the door, expecting to see Zuriel, but she faints when she finds Clary standing there instead. Clary and Rebecca quickly revive her and help her to the couch. Amada is in shock, as she had believed Clary had been dead for over 7 years. However, after recovering, she welcomes Clary back. When Clary asks about Zuriel, Amada is visibly emotional, nearly breaking into tears. Clary then requests something to eat, but Amada remains in shock. Rebecca consoles Clary as they all settle down. During the meal, Clary starts asking Amada about her marriage with Zuriel. Though the conversation makes Amada uncomfortable, she speaks honestly. Clary then insists on doing the dishes, which further unsettles Amada. That evening, Amada confronts Zuriel for not telling her about Clary's return. She begins to suspect that he still loves Clary, but Zuriel avoids the discussion and walks out on her. Meanwhile, Clary is lost in thought, reminiscing about her past with Zuriel. She remembers when she excitedly told him about winning a visa lottery to the United States, only for him to react negatively. In frustration, she had indirectly mocked his limitations, which caused him to walk out on her. Now, she deeply regrets leaving him and realizes that she has truly lost the love of her life. That night, Zuriel drowns his sorrows in alcohol while his wife retreats to their bedroom, feeling neglected. The next day, Amada confides in her friend about Clary's return. Her friend warns her that Clary might be back to take Zuriel away from her. She advises Amada to be smart and step up in her marriage to prevent losing her husband. Later, Zuriel is shocked to see Clary in his office. She warmly greets him, and they spend time together. Clary suggests they go out for lunch at a nice restaurant, and he agrees. While dining, Clary insists on hearing about Zuriel's life, specifically his love story with Amada, but he remains silent. On their way back, Clary expresses happiness for Zuriel, knowing that he now owns a successful business. She continues asking questions about his wife, but he refuses to answer. Eventually, she asks to be dropped off and takes a cab home. That night, Clary drinks excessively, unable to handle the pain. Rebecca intervenes, taking the bottle away and explaining why she had kept Clary's return a secret. She confesses that when she first saw Zuriel with Amada, both looking so happy together, she decided it was best not to inform him about Clary. This revelation devastates Clary even more, and Rebecca does her best to console her. But now, the big question remains. If you were in Zuriel's shoes, would you consider going back to the love of your life, to whom you once made a promise, even though you are now married? Share your thoughts in the comments as we see how the story unfolds. While Zuriel was working in his bedroom, Amada approached him and questioned where he had been and who he was with, as she had received information that he had gone out for lunch. Zuriel admitted that he had spent time with Clary. Amada then shared her thoughts, expressing that she and Zuriel were never meant to be together. However, instead of engaging in the conversation, Zuriel walked out on her again, avoiding the discussion. Amada, on the other hand, was deeply unsettled, convinced that he still had feelings for Clary. One day, Clary packed her belongings and informed Rebecca that she planned to stay at Zuriel's house for a while. Rebecca strongly opposed the idea, warning that it could create problems in Zuriel's marriage. However, Clary dismissed her concerns, insisting that everything happening was Rebecca's fault in the first place. Despite Rebecca's attempts to dissuade her, Clary was determined to take her chances and see if Zuriel would still accept her. With that, she left, leaving Rebecca wondering what had come over her. Amada was shocked to see Clary arrive with her bags, insisting that she would be staying for a while. She asked if Zuriel was aware of this arrangement, but Clary managed to convince her, and Amada reluctantly showed her to the guest room. That same day at the office, Zuriel's secretary informed him that all the staff, including the accountant, had submitted their resignation letters. They saw the business crumbling and decided to leave. However, the secretary chose to stay, believing that the business would rise again. Zuriel appreciated her loyalty before she left. Shortly after, he received a call from his wife, prompting him to leave for home immediately. Upon arriving home, he was warmly welcomed by Clary, which made Amada visibly uncomfortable. Clary explained that she would be staying for a while, claiming that Rebecca was too busy and that she also wanted to spend time with Amada. Amada called for dinner, but before she could lead Zuriel to the dining table, Clary quickly took over and guided him there herself. At the dining table, Clary brought up topics that deeply irritated Amada, particularly because they revolved around the fact that she had married Zuriel. The tension became so obvious that Amada had to find an excuse to leave, yet Zuriel remained silent throughout the conversation. That night, Amada expressed her discomfort about Clary staying in their home. However, Zuriel hesitated to ask Clary to leave, as he didn't want to be perceived as the bad person in the situation. Frustrated, Amada told him to leave and be with the woman he truly wanted, expressing her anger with a hiss. From the way things were unfolding, it was clear that the situation was not going to end well. If you were in this position, what would you do? The next morning, as Zuriel was about to leave for work, Clary pleaded to ride with him, and he agreed. Meanwhile, in the living room, Amada's friend made her realize that Clary was after her husband. She was shocked that Amada still considered Clary her best friend. Her friend listed several reasons why Amada needed to wake up to reality, but it was clear that Amada didn't know how to handle the situation. as the bond she once shared with Clary was still strong. But let's see how things unfold. Later, after picking up an order, Clary gave Zuriel a gift, a pair of shoes. He appreciated her thoughtful gesture, and when she insisted on accompanying him to the office, he eventually agreed. Upon arriving at the office, they discovered that all the employees had left. Clary asked Zuriel what was going on, and he confided in her about the challenges his business was facing. He explained how a delayed delivery of raw materials caused his investors to pull out. Seeing how dire the situation was, Clary decided to help him by settling his loan and investing in his business to get it back on track. At first, Zuriel wanted to refuse, but eventually he accepted and thanked her. This truly showed the power of having a supportive and genuine friend. That night, Clary had a dream about the past, how Zuriel had once promised to wait for her and had given her a ring. When she woke up, she quickly took her pills. Meanwhile, Amada woke up as well and saw her husband enjoying a deep and intimate conversation with Clary. They both seemed to be having a good time, which angered Amada, causing her to storm off to her room. Clary then shared her dream with Zuriel, saying it felt like it had happened just yesterday. However, Zuriel quickly cut the moment short by taking his coffee cup to the kitchen. The next morning, while Amada was organizing her things, Clary walked into her room without knocking, asking for something she needed. When Amada told her she didn't have it, she sternly warned Clary to knock before entering her room. However, Clary used the opportunity to talk about the wonderful moments she had shared with Zuriel, then left, leaving Amada feeling hurt. A few days later, Clary decided to go to work with Zuriel since she was now an investor in his business. However, Zuriel told her to keep it low-key because of his wife. They left together, unaware that Amada had been in the background, listening to their conversation in shock. At the office, Clary and Zuriel had a great time together, but it was becoming increasingly clear that Clary wanted more than just a business relationship. They went out for lunch at a restaurant and returned home together. When Zuriel tried to hug Amada upon his return, she walked away from him. Frustrated, Amada finally confronted Zuriel, telling him she was not comfortable with how he left with Clary every morning and returned home with her every evening. Zuriel tried to make her understand, but she kept nagging, pushing him to leave the conversation altogether. Meanwhile, Clary, who had been in the background, overheard their argument. The next day, Amada confided in her friend about everything happening in her home, expressing how exhausted she was with the entire situation. Her friend advised her to stand up to Clary and confront her about her actions, making it clear that she was not okay with them. However, Amada still found it difficult to do so, as she and Clary had once been the best of friends before Clary left. If you were in Amada's shoes, what would you do? How would you handle this situation? Would you still remain friends with Clary? Kindly leave a comment as we follow the story to its conclusion. One day, while Amada was preparing lunch, she accidentally cut herself. Her husband comforted her and helped her finish cooking, and for a moment, they enjoyed some time together. Later that day, Clary joined Zuriel as he watched a show. During their conversation, Clary brought up Amada's past struggles and limitations. However, Zuriel defended his wife, reminding Clary that those days were in the past and that Amada had grown into a better person. He then asked Clary when she planned to return home, to which she replied that she would be staying for a few more days. Zuriel then left for his room, but Clary followed him. She expressed how much she missed him and reminded him of the vow he once made to her. When she attempted to take things further, Zuriel stopped her and walked away. Back in the living room, Clary revealed to Zuriel the dark truth behind the visa she had won years ago. She explained that it was a trap used to abduct people, rob them of everything they had, and exploit them daily. She had been unable to contact anyone for help until she was finally able to escape with the assistance of someone. She poured out her pain to Zuriel, who comforted her. Meanwhile, Amada had been in the background, listening to everything, and for the first time, she felt deep sympathy for Clary. That night, Amada lay awake, remembering the day she had told Zuriel about the baby she was carrying and how she didn't know who the father was. She recalled how Zuriel had offered to marry her to save her from shame. how she had initially refused but later agreed because he had been so convincing. She also remembered how he had insisted on marrying her despite the fact that she lost the baby. The memories overwhelmed her, and she felt terrible. The next morning, Zuriel realized that Amada was missing. Worried, he called the police to report the case. Clary, however, tried to get his attention, urging him to focus on her since Amada had left on her own. But because Amada was his wife, Zuriel was determined to find her and make her understand that he was not the same man he had been 7 years ago. Without hesitation, he left in search of her. That same day, Scarlett informed Amada that Zuriel had been calling her non-stop, but she had refused to answer. Scarlett reminded Amada that even though she had married Zuriel because of her pregnancy, she should not allow anyone to ruin her marriage. However, Amada insisted on giving Zuriel and Clary the chance to be together. Frustrated, Scarlett told her to do whatever she pleased and left. Do you think Amada is handling this the right way? If you were in her position, would you make the same decision? Share your thoughts in the comments. When Zuriel returned home after searching for Amada, Clary informed him that Amada had left a note. However, he hadn't seen it. She also revealed that she knew how Zuriel and Amada had gotten married and about Amada's miscarriage. Zuriel, however, made it clear that he loved his wife despite everything that had happened. He told Clary that the future she envisioned with him could never happen, not only because he had moved on, but also because he was married and would do whatever it took to get his wife back. Then he left, leaving Clary to regret her past decisions. Some weeks later, with Scarlett's help, Zuriel was finally able to find Amada. She told him that she had left because she overheard Clary's story and felt pity for her. She thought it was best to leave so that Zuriel and Clary could be together. However, Zuriel opened up to her, revealing that he had genuinely loved her from the moment she started keeping him company when Clary was gone. Amada was taken aback by his confession. Zuriel also told her about his company's financial struggles and how Clary had invested a significant amount of money to save it. He admitted that he had kept this from her because he didn't want her to worry. He then apologized for everything and promised never to make the same mistake again. They both embraced the moment, rekindling their love. One day, Clary visited Zuriel and told him to keep the money he had sent to her instead of borrowing from others. She reminded him that she was an investor and that he could repay her whenever he regained his financial footing, no strings attached. She then sincerely apologized to Amada for trying to interfere in her marriage, blaming herself for leaving in the first place. She decided to move on with her life and return to the United States. Before leaving, she wished Zuriel and Amada a happy married life. Just as Clary was about to leave, Amada ran after her. She apologized and forgave her, and in that moment, they reconciled their differences. They became best friends again and shared a heartfelt moment together. This movie teaches us valuable life lessons. Never get married out of pity. Always take responsibility for your actions, and understand that most people will not put their lives on hold just to wait for you. It also highlights the importance of communication in a successful marriage and reminds us that no matter what, we should stand by the ones we truly love. Let go of the past, move forward, and embrace the future. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more exciting updates on the latest Nigerian movies. See you next time.
OKEYE.